The long-standing debate over the origin of pasta began when the French argued that they had invented the dish with love.
Meanwhile, Italians claimed that they invented the dish with flair and style. This rivalry had been simmering between the two countries for far too long. Word spread quickly that a war was brewing over the pasta conflict, and people around the world started to take sides. Of course, those loyal to France supported their claim, whilst those with Italian roots were determined to uphold their country's honour.
Soon enough, both sides were eager for battle.
Leaders from both factions gathered at the summit of Mount Kilimanjaro to negotiate the details of this impending pasta war. However, it quickly became apparent that neither side was willing to compromise, and so an agreement could not be reached. With no other option available, a full-scale war was declared by both sides as the sun set. The French and Italians was given 1 week to prepare for the ensuing chaos. Armies descended upon Italy and France, eager to fight for their respective countries. Preparations on both sides were frantic as the days rapidly disappeared. Rifles, swords, bows and arrows, cannons and more were continuously built, tested and modified, all in the hope of finding an edge over their enemy. Meanwhile, citizens of both nations rummaged through their pantries, contributing anything they had on hand which could be used to arm and defend themselves. Airmail letters were sent out, requesting supplies from various parts of the world. Everyone knew that victory may very well depend on how well each side was supplied. As the first day of battle dawned upon Europe, the French Italian army faced off against one another in the vast Piazza di Spagna located in Rome. A deep silence fell upon the area as the two armies glared across the cobblestone streets, each awaiting the command of their leaders. Suddenly, a voice broke the tense calm. The generals from both countries stood atop the balconies of adjacent buildings and declared it was time for the first battle to commence. Immediately, the soldiers raced forward, clashing, swords shrieking against one another in the narrow alleys. The battle lasted nearly 4 hours before coming to a close shortly after midday. Few remained standing, though the French had obtained a slight advantage in numbers. An exhausted cheer arose amongst the French, signalling their hard-fought victory. Before either side had time to rest, however, the second round of battle began. This time, the battlefield shifted to Florence, where the French enjoyed their home ground advantage. As before, a bloodthirsty roar of Italian voices vibrated throughout the air, followed swiftly by the sound of approaching French cries for vengeance. Once again, the two armies engaged in intense battle. Blasts from cannons thundered in the background, followed by thunderous echoes of shouting and rallying cries. Throughout the chaos, both sides were surprisingly evenly matched, with neither side giving in or gaining a distinct advantage.
At last, the fighting came to an end when the Pope himself ordered for peace.
His decision was not greeted with joy, for both the French and Italians were determined to prove who was the true creator of the beloved pasta. All of Europe was shocked at the sudden ceasefire and demanded a resolution to this ongoing quarrel once and for all. Finally, the great pasta debate was set to be solved with a 1-week-long tournament known as the Great Pasta Duel. It would be comprised of 3 separate duels, each focusing on a different aspect of pasta making. The nation whose team triumphed in each event would be declared the winner and victor of the much-anticipated debate. The night before the tournament commenced, tension soared amongst the French and Italian teams. They both attempted to stretch their muscles and minds in preparation for the series of grueling tests that were to come. But nonetheless, excitement filled the air, as both teams agreed that the outcome of the next week would determine the real creators of pasta for centuries to come. Each day saw a new test, from creation and presentation to flavour and texture, and the competition grew fiercer as the days passed. On the third day, the chefs from both countries created a simple but tasty pasta meal, which the judges deemed to be the best. Both the French and the Italians presented dishes worthy of the award, and the result was unanimous. On the fourth day, the crowd applause was showing blatantly who they believed was the original creator of the delicious pasta dish. The French had started off strong and maintained their dominance, while the Italians had somewhat regained their confidence, making it an exciting duel. By the fifth and final day, the Italians had managed to snatch the overall points victory with a stunning finale. When the announcement was made, the Italians cheered in euphoric jubilation as everyone leapt from their seats. Onlookers around the globe were delighted by the outcome, as it meant that Italy could proudly proclaim to be the birthplace of pasta. Meanwhile, the French, disheartened but still proud, accepted the result with grace. A few months later, the Italian-French alliance held a joint celebration to commemorate the award-winning pasta dish. During the festivities, the French presented the Italians with a bowl of homemade spaghetti in recognition of their win. From then on, the relationship between the two countries flourished to heights that no one dared thought ever possible.
For years after the great pasta duel, people remembered the cooperative spirit that existed between both nations.
Even today, many continue to pay homage to the iconic dish, creating variations each one based on their own cultural values. From traditional Italian recipes to French-influenced gourmet creations, pasta is a dish we can all appreciate and enjoy. And the legend of the Great Pasta War lives on as every day families from around the globe serve up some variation of this entree. Despite the tumult of the past, Italy and France conquered their differences to create one of the greatest dishes in history for generations to enjoy. The lesson: love and style make for a delicious dinner.